This is the most boring election night ever. Unless you know what to watch for. A test to see if Coloradans are ready to get rid of the Taxpayer Bill of Rights altogether. Control of the state's largest school board could switch sides. And don't sleep on Aurora, where a candidate could reach an American milestone tonight. Also, I think politicians should have to take a position on how early we can decorate for Christmas. That's next. We begin tonight with an uncomfortable question. I'll say right off, everybody is relieved that the FBI caught that white supremacist who admitted that he wanted to bomb a synagogue in Pueblo. But here's that question. Was he really a threat to bomb that place? Or was he just some loudmouth racist who eagerly took fake explosives offered to him by undercover agents? Our Steve Steger looks at the line between smart law enforcement work and setting somebody up.
Well, it's rather a typical, what we call a UCO, undercover operation.
The kind of operation the Bureau has been running since the 70s, according to Bob Pence, the former special agent in charge of the FBI's Denver office.
Undercover operations are used frequently to get the type information firsthand that you need to prosecute some heavy major crimes.
In this case, the affidavit details how Richard Holzer was contacted by as many as 4 undercover agents posing as white supremacists.
What the agents have got to do is avoid entrapment.
According to the affidavit, Holzer mentions his desire to use explosives on Temple Emmanuel, and the undercover agents offer to get him pipe bombs and dynamite. According to court documents, one agent drove Holzer to the motel where all of the agents showed him the bombs. He announced the plan, then they arrested him. How far is too far for those agents? Pence says they are likely getting a lot of feedback from their bosses and FBI lawyers who make sure that they aren't crossing a line.
Believe me, there are so many eyes watching every step that we make on that.
He says those lawyers are looking for something else.
You have to have the predisposition of the person that's under investigation.
That is the most important piece of evidence. In this case, the affidavit says Holzer discussed explosives first.
It has to be there that that person wants to hire somebody to kill his wife, that wants to acquire explosives for a bombing.
Now, Pence says the defense almost always tries to use the entrapment argument, but in all of his years of watching cases, he's never actually seen it work in court. That's because the legal teams for the FBI are so thorough. Now, next viewer Valerie wrote in after the show last night, surprised that the feds released so much information about this investigation. A couple of different takes on that. Pence says it could be a warning for anyone else thinking about doing something like this. And a former U.S. attorney I talked to says it's good for them to be this transparent to show the public that so that they can see something working. Kyle.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Odd year elections can be more odd than they are interesting. No big races like Senate or for the presidency. But these are the years when Coloradans can focus on the local stuff that has a real immediate impact in our communities. I'm thinking about maybe running on a platform of getting every county to send the I voted sticker with your mail-in ballot. They don't all do it. Denver does it. Adams County does it too, which is cool unless Adams County loses your ballot along with a truckload of them like last year, or sends you a misprinted ballot like they did to thousands this year. Adams County. As of midnight, more than 1 in 3 Republicans statewide had already voted. Republicans love them some voting. 31% of unaffiliated and 31% of Democrats have turned in their ballots. This tends to be the story of off-year elections both here and across America, a Republican edge. But Colorado always sees a big wave of across-the-board voters in the last 24 hours, so those numbers might not hold steady. The conservative voting edge at this point is bad news for Proposition CC, which seeks to permanently keep your Taxpayer Bill of Rights refund. Politics guy Marshall Zellinger is looking at all the statewide ballot issues from Aurora City Hall. You're out there, Marshall, because that city is the largest in Colorado that's picking a new mayor tonight.
Yeah, we'll be watching for the top 3 candidates that will come here to City Hall in a little bit. They're supposed to be here around the time ballots are no longer accepted after 7 o'clock because local Channel 8 in Aurora is broadcasting live from inside City Hall, and I think they're making a quick stop at that broadcast, so we'll be here to visit them. We'll follow one of them to their party, we think, tonight, and we'll also monitor those statewide races, CC and DD. But first, the mayor's race. 29 cities are holding mayoral elections today. Aurora just happens to be the biggest city on that list, and that's why we're here. It also gives me a chance for the 1,000th time to say I love being born and raised in Aurora. As we've told you, this is a nonpartisan race. You don't see party affiliation on the ballot, but the three candidates we're following are pretty clear in their affiliation. Former Congressman Mike Coffman, the Republican, Omar Montgomery, the Democrat, and Ryan Frazier, the former Republican, now independent. The winner of the race will have the honor of overseeing city council meetings that are getting feisty, with a lot of protests, like we saw last night at Aurora City Council meeting. There are issues with recent police responses and with the ICE facility being run inside Aurora city borders. That's going to be on the plate for the next mayor. The other major issues we're watching, Proposition CC and DD. CC asks you to give up your Tabor tax refund. DD asks you to legalize sports betting and tax the casino revenues at 10%. Funny thing about statewide tax votes, Colorado voters love to approve taxes, but only on sins and vices, not something everyone would pay for. Voters approve taxing retail marijuana, which now has a 15% sales tax. Colorado taxes cigarettes at 84 cents per pack. The makers of beer are taxed at 8 cents per gallon, and casinos already pay a tax based on how much they take in, which is what Proposition DD would also do, tax casinos on how much they will take in from sports betting. Those are the things we're all voting on, but it's the Arapahoe, Adams, and Douglas County voters that have that added mayor's race, and hopefully, Kyle, the Adams County voters who are watching won't be sending in hate mail.
This state taxes sins and vices. No suggestions that we're going to start taxing gluttony or vanity, are we, Marshall? Because those are my favorites.
Or snark.
Okay.
Although that's not a sin,
Very
I guess.
good. Yeah, I don't think that's a sin or a vice, really. All right. Marshall out in Aurora, which if he didn't mention earlier, he's from Aurora, and he loves it there. Hey, we found out what went wrong with that failed voter shaming attempt by Proposition CC's supporters. They sent out these mailers to people saying you get a B grade for voting and your neighbors get an A. We've explained that these social pressure campaigns are not unusual. This one was unusual because it backfired spectacularly. The mailer was supposed to go out to about 300,000 Democrats and independents, all of whom had missed a recent election or two. The pro-CC campaign figured that they would likely be their supporters, so maybe a little shaming would get them to go out and vote. But then a data error led that mailer to go out to double the number of voters intended and not just the people who were targeted. So it looks like Republicans and people who vote all the time. Anyway, it's a big public expensive oops. Earlier today, I asked our 9 News political experts, Republican Kelly Maher and Democrat James Mejia, which less covered races they'll be watching tonight. James is focused on the Denver School Board.
The money is pouring in. Again, we're hitting record levels with regard to investment in the volunteer elected position.
So this is the idea of the folks of the teachers union likes trying to kind of expand their power on the school board because they don't have a ton of it now. Is
well,
that fair
they
to
are.
say?
They've been on a losing streak.
Yeah.
The teachers union has lost the last several elections. They're looking for a big win, especially in the at-large seat. Tay Anderson, who has not held political office before, a young guy at 21, may be the answer to that. Very pro-teacher. He's a DPS grad.
Kelly, you're looking at a few different local races around the metro area.
Yeah, there are a lot of municipals that are up tonight, and people don't necessarily pay as much attention to them, but honestly, those are the races that actually affect their lives the most. In Jeffco, we have some county commissioner races up. We've got Andy Kerr, a former state senator. He's running against Joni Inman. She is very well connected in Jeffco. I'll be watching that. We'll be watching the Lakewood mayor's race. We'll be watching Thornton.
What we will not be watching tonight are very many efforts to pull elected leaders out of office early. This is recall night in Brighton, Colorado. The only recall before voters right on Election Day. The city's water fight about overbilling and allegations of a cover-up started the recall campaign against Mayor Ken Kreitzer. The other recalls that have made news this year either fizzled out or were set for special elections not on Election Day. The tiny town of Pitkin recalled a trustee. Voters will pick a new one later this month. The whole town board in Elizabeth is facing a recall. It's split over 2 votes in December and April. Up in Estes Park, Mayor Pro Tem Cody Walker was already recalled over a controversial idea to build a mountain roller coaster. Statewide, Republican plans to recall Democratic Governor Jared Polis, as well as 5 state legislators, went kaput. Each one. So Election Night 2019 is not total recall. We're watching you, Brighton. So what if Colorado's approach of throwing big money at the opioid epidemic isn't the right idea?
People should have learned the lesson from the whole what we call big tobacco.
And it's a sign that if you're repeating the same error over and over again, you might have a stencil problem. Next. We've tried to keep up the focus on how Colorado is attacking the opioid epidemic, and you can expect a third try, a whole bunch of bills with different approaches at the state legislature next year. But we also can't ignore how Colorado fits into the big picture, and the big picture shows an important lesson that America missed. Here's our Anusha Roy.
There has been an evolution in bills over the last 3 years, ever since the state's opioid interim committee was formed. Their first priority was to save lives.
Now the process has become where we have a lot of those safeguards in place, but what we're really trying to do now is prevent the flow. So we're trying to, in a sense, turn off the faucets so that we don't have to catch as many people downstream and limit as many exposures as we can.
Estimates show the state has spent more than $50 million through these bills on the opioid epidemic. But pain specialist Dr. Jonathan Clapp said the work is far from over.
These bills aren't the end-all be-all by any means.
Yes, opioids are top of mind, and yes, it is costing money. But it's not the only issue that sucked up this kind of time and resources. Lawmakers routinely revisit education, protecting the state's natural resources, and regulating oil and gas. Then there's the fact that the country, including Colorado, has been through a similar battle before.
You could say people should have learned the lesson from the whole what we call big tobacco.
Political science professor Norman Provisor at MSU Denver says the point of the 1998 tobacco payout was to teach companies a lesson.
Almost $250 billion. I don't have that in my bank account, but I think I know how many zeros are involved.
Enough zeros to try and teach a lesson that it costs a lot of money when companies lie.
Tobacco companies for a long time claimed it wasn't harmful.
But here we are again with states trying to teach that same lesson to pharmaceutical companies, while Colorado is still getting money from the tobacco settlement, an anticipated roughly $85 million this year.
All these big industries, that's still present.
So I don't think you could say, well, tobacco served as a bright lesson to everyone else, because it clearly didn't.
So the bills will first have to pass a legislative committee next week before it can be introduced in January, Kyle.
And then they announced these bills, Anusha, and I'm sure they have different timelines of how long before they think they can start to make a dent through some of these actions.
Yeah, so Dr. Clapp, who you heard from, said that it could take as long as 7 years for them to really find out if this stuff is effective, because they said that's how long it can take for some people to go through the different phases of addiction, from first taking an opioid all the way to an overdose to rehab. So, I mean, this is a very long journey before we'll even know how well it's working in Colorado.
Well, they're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. All right. Thank you, Anusha.
Calm and cool in the city tonight after a day with sunshine and near 60 degrees. This time tomorrow night, freezing drizzle and flurries. Yeah, the weather a bit of a roller coaster this week, but it's a ride we can all get on because the storms are fairly weak in nature and the temperature spreads only about 10 degrees. The really cold air stays to the north of us. The jet coming in fast and furious from the northwest, transporting the moisture in. And as that front backs in tomorrow afternoon after a mostly sunny start, we will see that wind shift bring in the low clouds, the fog, a bit of freezing drizzle, and maybe even some flurries right here to Denver. Not enough to impact travel, but just enough of a change. And then another storm coming in late in the weekend could do the same thing. We've got fair skies and 30 for you tonight. A dry night in the city. A chilly start to your day tomorrow. Highs near 50. Evening flurries and freezing drizzle, and then a slow warm up heading into the weekend. Another chance for a few flurries Sunday night into Monday. So an active weather pattern, just enough to keep it interesting. We'll be
very campy. It's a little over the top. Most of it's over the top.
He started Christmas in July to get ready to put it on display before Thanksgiving. And it's a sign that someone was just doing like they were told. Next. I should issue a trigger warning for this next story, a little heads up for people who are going to have a reaction to seeing Christmas decorations less than 1 week after Halloween. But you need to know some of our neighbors started on this stuff months ago. Our Katie Eastman shows us the creation of Camp Christmas.
Okay, they're good to go. So let's just bag all of that stuff in.
Spin around in Lonnie Hands-On's workshop.
Okay, fine.
And Christmas is in every corner.
And the reason I'm on the ground is because obviously Marie Antoinette's gown is extremely large.
Christmas with a twist.
That's Lucifer behind you.
Stick a candy cane through him and voila, Christmas.
It's a little over the top. Most of it's over the top.
All of this will fill 10,000 square feet and become a story you can walk around in. It starts in ancient Rome and goes up to Christmas present.
It's all meant to, cause that little glaze over in kids' eyes, when the enchantment hits, That's my weapon.
So I'm actually just gluing on the tops of these Christmas ornaments.
Getting that glaze can be tedious.
I've actually been doing this for like 3 days.
No task is too trivial.
So we've been working since July on this.
All these details might be dizzying.
No, but I'm glad that you cut this.
And it's not exactly cheap.
Oh, I cannot even go into that.
But it's worth it for Lonnie, Michelle, Parker, Kathleen, Ben, and Brad.
What else am I supposed to do?
Worth it because of how they'll make people feel.
The celebrations are not frivolous. It is a time of brotherhood, and it's a time of community, and it's a time that, we take care of each other.
For next,
it's going to be really lovely.
I'm Katie Eastman.
Camp Christmas opens at Stanley Marketplace on November 21st and runs through the end of the year. Lonnie's been doing elaborate Christmas displays since the 1980s, both here and overseas. He's not the only one. We saw the city of Denver engage in a little Christmas creep today. They have their workers out already putting up Christmas decorations on the city and county building downtown. Now that is a pretty elaborate display there. It's a special type of parking spot, reserved apparently for something none of us have ever heard of. That your feedback next. It's a sign of some extremely exclusive parking spots. Do not park your car or truck here, not your bike or your motorcycle. These spots are only for moto circles. Our viewer David took this picture in the parking lot outside the Denver Tech Center off Bellevue. If you see something that makes you laugh like this, do not laugh alone. Come on, take a picture, send it our way. Next at 9news.com is the email, or you can always get our attention with the hashtag HeyNext. Attention getting feedback from Ann Cross tonight about our top story. She writes, respectfully, I suggest the question of whether the nefarious would-be bomber would have gone through with it ignores the most important question. Does it matter if the intent existed? If I'm a member of that synagogue, I think not. Gary says, we received one of those flyers rating our voting attendance as B. We vote all the time, so we just assumed that our neighbors were voting more than once. Of all of the takes that we've heard about that botched flyer, Gary, you win. Thank you to everybody for voted. Thank you for caring about our community. Our coverage continues tonight on 9 News at 9 and 10 and online between now and then. See you next time.